Chief Justice and Associate Justices of the Supreme Court.
Here at home, the deep divisions, how to bring this country together, with the country now facing a Biden-Trump rematch.
We must be clear. Democracy is on the ballot. Your freedom is on the ballot.
Moments from now, before a joint session of Congress, the American people and the world, the president delivers his State of the Union.
I have never been more optimistic in my life about the prospects, what we can do if we just work together. There's nothing beyond our capacity.
Now reporting, David Muir.
Good evening from the nation's capital tonight. President Biden is just moments away from delivering his State of the Union address to the American people and, of course, to the world. He comes before the country tonight at a high-stakes moment in his presidency. Questions about his age, his rematch against Donald Trump now underway, with Trump set to clinch the Republican nomination after a near sweep on Super Tuesday this week. The national polling showing this is already a very close race, with Donald Trump in the lead. We have our powerhouse political team right here with me tonight, and as you can see, the chamber already filling with lawmakers, the president's cabinet, members of the Supreme Court just moments ago coming in to the chamber. We saw Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Sotomayor, Kagan, Justice Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, retired Justice Kennedy also there, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson also in attendance there tonight. And they're playing a role, as you know, in this presidential election, whether they would like to or not. Just this week, we saw them make that decision involving Donald Trump to keep him on the ballot across this country, saying Colorado could not take him off the ballot. They'll then take up another issue in the coming weeks about presidential immunity when it comes to one of the federal trials involving Donald Trump. You can see George Santos is actually there in the chamber as well. We'll get to why he's there coming up here in our coverage. Of course, he was expelled by the House, so the question you might be asking at home is, what is he doing there? So we'll ask our team right here. We're expecting the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, any moment. Of course, the First Ladies in these speeches always play an outsized role with the guests they invite for the President's State of the Union. The President tonight will be standing before a deeply divided Congress, speaking to a deeply divided nation, and at the same time well aware that this is also kickstarting his re-election campaign. His every move tonight, his every word, his energy will be closely studied amid questions about his age and whether voters will give him a second term. The President's message tonight will focus on immigration, the southern border, abortion rights, the economy, millions of new jobs, wage growth, the stock market reaching new highs. But the President, this White House, well aware many Americans are still not feeling this. Rachel Scott is in the House chamber tonight. Rachel, what is the mood? And we understand that the Speaker of the House, who, by the way, will be the third speaker to stand behind President Biden for a State of the Union, has asked the House chamber, asked his colleagues to be respectful.
Exactly, David. This is going to be a high-stakes address for the president. And look, you mentioned it. When President Biden enters this chamber tonight, he will be passing through what he knows is a deeply divided Congress, split on everything from immigration to funding for Ukraine. Inside of the chamber right now is a sea of white. Democrats wearing that color to show support for reproductive rights and abortion rights, an issue we know the president will be putting front and center in his address tonight. Now, some members are also wearing tags with the number 153 on it. A member telling us that's the number of days since Israel was attacked by Hamas. Those tags are to show support for the Israeli hostages. And of course, you mentioned it, David, right behind the president tonight, a different and new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He has been urging his Republican members to be respectful and civil tonight, saying decorum is the order of the day. We caught up with him on his way into the chamber. He told us that everyone will be on their best behavior, but David, we will have to see whether or not that actually happens.
Speaker Johnson holding an off-the-record meeting with reporters and anchors here in Washington today. We can't get into the details. We appreciate the fact that they invite us in on the days of these big speeches, the president as well. But one thing Speaker Johnson did not mind us sharing, John, is his concern that this remain respectful tonight, hoping to uphold the great traditions of these State of the Unions.
He wants civility in the chamber. He wants decorum in the chamber. He has sent that message out, and some of his members have received it skeptically. I mean, remember how raucous it was last year?
And in fact, Marjorie Taylor Greene, when pressed on this today, said, well, we'll just wait and see what the president has to say. So we'll be watching that. You saw the image of George Santos there moments ago. I want to bring Rachel Scott back in because, Rachel, the obvious question for people watching at home is, what is he doing there?
Exactly. Many Americans may be remembering that Congressman George Santos was expelled from the House. He's facing 23 counts, accused of everything from credit card fraud to identity theft, lying to federal officials. He was expelled by his own fellow members who called him a disgrace. Well, he decided to show back up today. As a reminder here, former members do have privileges to be on the House floor, and Santos has kept his floor privileges despite being expelled. So he is allowed to be inside of the chamber tonight. I am spotting him right now. He is standing in the back here. He's not seated down with his former colleagues at all. He's standing in the back by congressional aides where Senate pages are standing right now, but he is inside of the chamber for this State of the Union address tonight, David.
So bottom line, you're welcome to the chamber even if you're expelled.
You are welcomed into the chamber even if you are expelled. The House rules actually say nothing about that at all. You are not allowed back in the chamber if you've been convicted of a crime or if you are a lobbyist. But the bottom line, even as a former member of the House that has been expelled by his colleagues, he is allowed to be here for the State of the Union address tonight, David.
Extraordinary. It's 2024 in America. You saw that shot there of Senator Bernie Sanders there moments ago, just one of the many voices offering advice, counsel to the White House, to President Biden, the Biden campaign. Mary, the president, just moments ago saying he's feeling good as he headed to the Capitol from the White House. Mary Bruce, our chief White House correspondent. It's really hard to underscore just how significant this night will be for President Biden.
This is a huge and massively critical and pivotal moment for this president. He knows it. The White House knows it. The campaign certainly knows it. Look, he is down in the polls to Donald Trump. He is facing these persistent concerns about his age. He certainly knows well that everyone is paying paying attention tonight, not just to what he is saying, but to how he is saying it. His challenge here is now to take advantage of this massive audience, perhaps the largest he'll have all year, to try and change the public perception. He has to sell skeptical voters on his accomplishments and also show the American people that he is up for another 4 years. I mean, bottom line, he has to bring it in this speech. Now, the campaign feels that at this point in the campaign that the American people aren't truly dialed into the race, that they haven't fully registered yet that we're heading for this Biden-Trump rematch. They know these men, but the Biden team feels the American people are suffering from what they call Trump amnesia. This is the president's chance to change some of that. I'm told he won't call out Donald Trump by name, but it will be very clear who he is talking about as he lays out their very different visions for the future of this country, David.
So, Mary, not expected to draw on Donald Trump's name during this speech, but very likely to draw on contrasts between these two men as he moves through the night. And it's my understanding he wants to do it while at the same time respecting the chamber.
He has to strike the right tone here. First of all, remember, this is a format which Joe Biden is very comfortable. He relished his time in the Senate and in Congress. He feels very comfortable in this environment, and he certainly respects Congress. And he also wants to strike a respectful tone, even as he is going to pressure Republicans to call them out on certain issues, especially on things like immigration. He also, of course, is doing this at a time that he's trying to court Republican voters to come to his side.
Second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, entering the chamber. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, up there. She'll stand behind the president, as she always does, but along with a new speaker this time, Speaker Mike Johnson. Of course, it was Kevin McCarthy a year ago. It was House Speaker Nancy Pelosi for the first address to a joint session of Congress. There, he's likely waving to his wife at the podium, or perhaps Mike Johnson as well. They're both up there together. Martha Raddatz, this is also a House chamber that hasn't always been welcoming. We had that moment last year with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And in particular, the Republicans in the House have really halted a couple of key things that the president has tried to accomplish just in recent weeks. Aid to Ukraine looms large. They have halted that, saying you must act on the border first. Then the president encouraged Senate Republicans and Democrats to get that bill in front of them. They prepared a bipartisan border bill, very heavy security. He said he was ready to sign it, and then the House torpedoed it.
They torpedoed it because Donald Trump wanted it torpedoed. He wants this to be an election issue. He believes this is his issue and that he can dominate on that issue. And we talk about decorum. Obviously, we see the First Lady coming in there now, David.
Entering the chamber here tonight, Jill Biden, who has taken a more significant role just in recent days, Mary Bruce, in this campaign, a signal that she's going to be out there fighting for her husband, too.
She absolutely will. She is, of course, his closest, most critical advisor, someone who's behind his race, again, 100%, and his most important and top surrogate. She is going to be out on the campaign trail heavily, I suspect, in the coming months, David.
Here's the gavel here. Speaker Mike Johnson, his first time in this role. Let's listen.
The President's Cabinet.
The president's cabinet now entering the room. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. And Martha, just to bring you back into this conversation, of course, Secretary Blinken on the world stage and has been for many months now, not only with Israel and Gaza, but with Ukraine as well. And again, a lot of questions, even from within their own party, about the humanitarian crisis inside Gaza. And the president is expected to make major news tonight on Gaza.
Exactly, and what they want to do is set up a floating dock, a floating pier, so the U.S. can help get aid into Gaza from ships to deliver this very, very critical aid. People are starving to death in Gaza. You saw Secretary Blinken there. He has been so busy. He has been over to the region so many times. We also saw Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin there. We know he had some health problems. He did not tell the president he was in an ICU unit. He has made up for that. He has apologized for that. But they have both been very busy with Gaza, with Ukraine. And as you said, that aid to Ukraine has been blocked. The border bill blocked. We talk about decorum, but the president walks in there with his own red wall of resistance. And this really is, the Republicans are fully aware this is a huge event for President Biden. This is almost the beginning of the campaign for him. So whether they maintain that decorum or not, we'll have to see.
And the question is, how will it be received, any kind of behavior in this room? The American people often judge this with very different eyes. They're not inside the Beltway here in Washington. They're watching from home. They know this is a deeply divided country. And as we all have heard so often on the trail, a lot of people say, you know, we have a lot more in common than we have that separates us. And often we don't see that in our own lawmakers. So we'll keep that in mind as we move forward and watch this night. Lindsay Davis also with us here at the desk. We're expecting to hear the House Sergeant at Arms any moment, Lindsay, introduce the president. One of the things I know you've been looking into are the independents, the moderate voters, some of the Nikki Haley supporters just this week who seem to give an indication that they're not necessarily going to vote for the Republican nominee automatically.
Independent voters, as you well know, David, determine the outcome of elections. We've seen it time and time again. In 2020, Joe Biden was able to win those independent voters over in 6 battleground states. The prior election, 2016, Donald Trump was able to win over independent voters in 6 of the battleground states. In particular tonight, I'm interested in those free agent Nikki Haley voters, and is he going to be able to win them over, perhaps persuade them? Because as you were referencing on Tuesday, we saw that 51% of them said that they actually approve of Joe Biden. 76% said that they oppose abortion bans. And so they are going to be listening very critically, I would imagine, to what he has to say. And by many stretches of imagination, this is an opening statement for them.
No question about it, Lindsay. And you saw Alejandro Mayorkas, Homeland Security Secretary, there moments ago, also in the chamber. And on immigration, a key issue tonight, Republicans, as we have reported here, spent months imploring President Biden to do something on the southern border. Then, of course, as we mentioned with Martha, the bipartisan border security bill, Republicans and Democrats, the president saying, get it to my desk, I will sign it. Only to have House Republicans there in the chamber tonight who halted that bill at Donald Trump's urging. And as Martha points out, that's likely because Donald Trump would like to keep immigration as an issue that is front and center come November. Tonight, Mary Bruce, President Biden will likely not shy away from immigration. It seems he recognizes there's an opportunity for him in this moment, too, because he had an historic offer in front of him, bipartisan Republicans and Democrats in the Senate saying, we are finally ready to work together on this.
And the kind of reforms that Republicans had been demanding for months, but then in stepped Donald Trump, urging Republicans not to take the deal. And of course, we know it has gone nowhere since then. It is interesting, of course, this comes just a week after Donald Trump and Joe Biden were both down at the border together, those dueling visits. President Biden again trying to up the pressure on Republicans to finally act on this issue. Of course, also trying to shift the blame to Republicans and Trump. And he did have that remarkable invitation asking Donald Trump to join him in this. I suspect tonight you will hear him again urge Congress to put politics aside to get this border deal done.
The Attorney General Merrick Garland there as well, who has also been a key figure in this administration. Under fire from some, given the investigations into Donald Trump, but has made the case that he has done this in an independent fashion. He has stayed far from the special counsels in all of these cases that are hard to track for people at home, I'm sure. He's there in the chamber as well. As you heard Rachel Scott point out, a number of white suits in the chamber tonight. Many of the Democratic lawmakers wearing them, a signal on reproductive rights. The president putting the blame on Donald Trump in recent days for appointing the justices to the Supreme Court who overturned Roe. And what the president says are the ripple effects already being seen across the country. Of course, the debate in Alabama in recent days, that state's highest court determining that frozen embryos are, in fact, people. Clinics and hospitals in Alabama almost immediately halting IVF fertility treatments, the procedures right when women and their husbands and families were in the middle of this process. And there has been a move across this country almost immediately, not only in Alabama, but moving forward in several other states to protect women from this discomfort moving forward. And also in that chamber tonight, Rachel Scott, you spoke with a young woman, a mother and wife in Texas, who became the center of a major national story when doctors determined, and let's listen here at the door. We'll get back to you in a moment.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
And there you have the moment. Bill McFarland, House Sergeant at Arms, introducing President Biden with his State of the Union address. The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer behind him. escorting him down that center aisle as he shakes hands with members of both parties, I should say. And John Carl, we've watched so many of these, but as Mary Bruce mentioned here earlier, this is the kind of moment that fuels this particular president.
This is always a big moment, a big television audience, all the pomp and circumstance. But the truth is, State of the Union addresses are often little noted and long remembered. They don't have a lasting impact. This one, David, tonight, it really feels different. He has a chance to prove to a skeptical country that he has what it takes, that he has the physical fitness, the mental fitness to go head-to-head in a very brutal, long campaign with Donald Trump and to serve another 4, really 5 years as president. So this feels like an incredibly consequential moment, especially also because of how late it is. It's March 7th. It's just after Super Tuesday. Rarely do you see, ever in my lifetime, you've seen a State of the Union address that actually doubles as effectively the kickoff for a presidential campaign.
And you mentioned a skeptical audience, John, and I know that you mean that in terms of not only President Biden, but many in this country who are skeptical of Donald Trump as well. And we've seen it in the polling. Americans across the country who say, we don't want either one of these men running for president. We want other choices. And yet this is where the country is right now, which makes the stakes even higher tonight for him to try to convince some of those moderate independent voters that Lindsay was talking about, who he brought over before. The question is, would he be able to do it again?
I mean, you have upwards of 70% of the American public saying that they don't want the rematch that they are about to have. They don't want to see Biden-Trump yet again.
Marjorie Taylor Greene there wearing her Make America Great hat and holding up the pin. We had an idea that Republicans in the House chamber, John, would have pins tonight.
Yep, wearing pins, highlighting what they're calling Biden's failed policy at the border. Look, state of the decorum issue. So much has changed. I mean, I've been in the chamber for about a dozen of these things, and I fully remember when Barack Obama had a big joint session speech on health care, and one single member yelled out, "You lie," and it was this scandal. How could somebody, and now it's every member is using this as an opportunity to make a moment for themselves.
It sent shockwaves back then, and it should have. That was
it was quite a moment. It was a single member.
Yeah, and unfortunately now it's become a little more of the norm than not. Marjorie Taylor Greene talking with the president right now. Somebody there tapping the president on the shoulder, Martha Raddatz, and saying, keep moving.
Keep moving, but he certainly wasn't letting Marjorie Taylor Greene bother him. I think we talk about decorum. I think wearing a Make America Great hat is putting decorum aside right away. But in so many ways, and we talk about this is not only the State of the Union, this is the state of Joe Biden, because that's what everybody's going to be looking at tonight. How does Joe Biden handle this? Is he vigorous? Does he have the mental acuity that everybody's looking for? Last year, as we sat here, he gave a very powerful speech, got good marks for that. But again, this is a very different speech at a very different moment when voters are really, really looking at the president, both Democrats and Republicans.
Look at this. This is a patient president at this point, too. He's taking a number of selfies on his way down the center aisle.
This is classic Joe Biden, by the way. Most presidents, yes, they take their time walking through the chamber. They shake some hands. He's having full-on conversations. He's snapping selfies. I bet if he could, he would place calls to their mother and father. I mean, and he's chatting with everyone along the way.
We should mention Joe Manchin not running for re-election. Had been talk of perhaps a run with no labels or a third-party run of some sort. Joe Manchin letting the public know in just recent days that he would not be running for president. He said it was just too dangerous, actually, to run as a third-party candidate or independent candidate, John. He said the stakes were too high.
Stakes were too high, and Democrats firmly believe that a third-party candidacy re-elects or elects once again Donald Trump. Looking at Biden here, you've got to consider, I haven't been able to go back and count each and every one, but I believe this may be his 50th State of the Union address that he's been in the chamber
And he would be proud of that, by the way. Senator Coons there.
Turf.
Senator Coons, Senator Gillibrand, Republicans and Democrats welcoming here to the center aisle. And we always like to see that. Rachel Scott, you're in the chamber. So far, so good.
So far, far, so good, David, so far. And look here, the coveted seats here are along the aisles. That's where you're seeing members sort of rush to the aisles to try and greet the President of the United States. Notable on the Republican side, you saw some of the most conservative, right-wing members of the House. Congressman Matt Gaetz, Congressman Tim Burchett, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene trying to get the president's attention, to shake his hand, possibly deliver a message that they want the president to share tonight. You're hearing these chants now of 4 more years from Democrats tonight, a very stark reminder at what the president is heading into this critical election year, what is at stake. This is very much also about making an appeal to the American people in a very critical election year where he will be likely facing off against former President Donald Trump, David.
Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson there greeting the Chief Justice John Roberts as well with President Biden. Of course, they have a major decision, Justice Kagan there as well, a major decision looming here. In the next couple of weeks, they'll begin hearing arguments in Donald Trump's federal January 6th case, the election interference case, and whether or not he has absolute immunity. Judge Gorsuch, Judge Kavanaugh, both with smiles on their faces, greeting the president as we would expect. But it's always nice to see in these deeply polarized moments in our country when so far things play out the way they're supposed to. There you see the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and we'll stick with the president here, but we did see Nancy Pelosi talking with Mitch McConnell just before we came on the air tonight. Sort of a signal there, John Carl, of a changing guard. Nancy Pelosi obviously out of the speakership for a time now, and Mitch McConnell revealing that he will step down as leader.
I mean, what a changing of a guard, seeing the two of them, really two of the most powerful figures in Congress over the last half century. McConnell and Pelosi both making their marks in huge ways. Pelosi with health care and with all that President Biden got through Congress in his first 2 years. Mitch McConnell, the longest Senate leader in history, 17 years.
And it was nice to see McConnell and Pelosi engaged with one another, you know, in heavy discussion. Yeah, and they did.
And by the way, they were together on January 6th as the Capitol was attacked, and they were evacuated, working to get Congress back in session and to restart the certification of the presidential election that Trump supporters were trying to stop.
Not a surprise here, Mary Bruce, that the president is taking his time. He even joked with reporters off the record today that, you know, my own staff knows I feel very much at home up on the Hill.
And that shows here tonight, absolutely. And they think that that is something that will also play to his strengths here as he does deliver what is expected to be a very, very important speech.
Let's listen as Speaker Mike Johnson plays his role. Handing the Speaker a speech, handing the Vice President the State of the Union address as well.
Tony. Thank you. David Jill. Good evening. Good evening. If I were smart, I'd go home now. Mr. Speaker, Madam Vice President, members of Congress, my fellow Americans, in January 1941, Franklin Roosevelt came to this chamber to speak to the nation, and he said, I address you at a moment unprecedented in the history of the Union. Hitler was on the march. War was raging in Europe. President Roosevelt's purpose was to wake up Congress and alert the American people that this was no ordinary time. Freedom and democracy were under assault in the world. Tonight, I come to this same chamber to address the nation. Now, it's we who face an unprecedented moment in the history of the Union. And yes, my purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either. Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home as they are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time. Overseas, Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not. But Ukraine can stop Putin. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that needs to defend itself. That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers at war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way. But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. It wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Now, my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable. America is a founding member of NATO, the military alliance of democratic nations created after World War II to prevent war and keep the peace. And today, we've made NATO stronger than ever. We welcomed Finland to the alliance last year. And just this morning, Sweden officially joined, and their minister is here tonight. I'm going to stand up. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And they know how to fight. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome to NATO, the strongest military alliance the world has ever seen. I say this to Congress, we have to stand up to Putin. Send me a bipartisan national security bill. History is literally watching. History is watching. If the United States walks away, it will put Ukraine at risk. Europe is at risk. The free world will be at risk, emboldening others to do what they wish to do us harm. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away. We will not bow down. I will not bow down. In a literal sense, history is watching. History is watching. Just like history watched 3 years ago on January 6th, when insurrectionists stormed this very Capitol and placed a dagger to the throat of American democracy. Many of you were here on that darkest of days. We all saw with our own eyes the insurrectionists were not patriots. They'd come to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to overturn the will of the people. January 6th lies about the 2020 election and the plots to steal the election posed a gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War. But they failed. America stood. America stood strong, and democracy prevailed. We must be honest. The threat to democracy must be defended. My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. This is the moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies. Here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win. As I've done ever since being elected to office, I ask all of you, without regard to party, to join together and defend democracy. Remember your oath of office to defend against all threats, foreign and domestic. Respect free and fair elections, restore trust in our institutions, and make clear political violence has absolutely no place in America, zero place. Again, it's not hyperbole to suggest history is watching. We're watching. Your children and grandchildren will read about this day and what we do. History is watching another assault on freedom. Joining us tonight is Latoya Beasley, a social worker from Birmingham, Alabama. 14 months ago, she and her husband welcomed a baby girl thanks to the miracle of IVF. She scheduled treatments to have that second child, but the Alabama Supreme Court shut down IVF treatments across the state, unleashed by a Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. She was told her dream would have to wait. What her family had got through should never have happened. Unless Congress acts, it could happen again. So tonight, let's stand up for families like hers. To my friends across the aisle, don't keep this waiting any longer. Guarantee the right to AVF. Guarantee it nationwide. Like most Americans, I believe Roe v. Wade got it right. I thank Vice President Harris for being an incredible leader, defending reproductive freedom, and so much more. Thank you. My predecessor came to office determined to see Roe v. Wade overturned. He's the reason it was overturned, and he brags about it. Look at the chaos that has resulted. Joining us tonight is Kate Cox, the wife and mother from Dallas. She's become pregnant again and had a fetus of a fatal condition. Her doctor told Kate that her own life and her ability to have children in the future were at risk if she didn't act. Because Texas law banned her ability to act, Kate and her husband had to leave the state to get what she needed. What her family got through should have never happened as well, but it's happening in too many others. There are state laws banning the freedom to choose, criminalizing doctors, forcing survivors of rape and incest to leave their states to get the treatment they need. Many of you in this chamber and my predecessor are promising to pass a national ban on reproductive freedom. My God, what freedom else would you take away? Look, it's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following, and with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you're right about that. Clearly, those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women. But they found out. when reproductive freedom was on the ballot. We won in 2022 and 2020, and we'll win again in 2024. If you, the American people, send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again. Folks, America cannot go back. I'm here tonight to show what I believe is the way forward, because I know how far we come. 4 years ago next week, before I came to office, the country was hit by the worst pandemic and the worst economic crisis in a century. Remember the fear, record losses. Remember the spikes in crime and the murder rate, raging virus that took more than 1 million American lives of loved ones, millions left behind. A mental health crisis of isolation and loneliness. A president, my predecessor, failed the most basic presidential duty that he owes to American people, the duty to care. I think that's unforgivable. I came to office determined to get us through one of the toughest periods in the nation's history. We have. It doesn't make news, but in 1,000 cities and towns, the American people are writing the greatest comeback story never told. So let's tell the story here. Tell it here and now. America's comeback is building the future of American possibilities, building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down, investing in all America, in all Americans, to make sure everyone has a fair shot, and we leave no one behind. The pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccines that saved us from COVID are now being used to beat cancer, turning setback into comeback. That's what America does. That's what America does. Folks, my inherited economy is on the brink. Now our economy is literally the envy of the world. 15 million new jobs in just 3 years, a record, a record. Unemployment at 50-year lows. A record 16 million Americans are starting small businesses, and each one is a literal act of hope. With historic job growth and small business growth for Black and Hispanics and Asian Americans, 800,000 new manufacturing jobs in America and counting. Where is it written we can't be the manufacturing capital of the world? We are, we will. More people have health insurance today. More people have health insurance today than ever before. The racial wealth gap is as small as it's been in 20 years. Wages keep going up. Inflation keeps coming down. Inflation has dropped from 9% to 3%, the lowest in the world, and tending lower. The landing is and will be soft. And now, instead of importing foreign products and exporting American jobs, we're exporting American products and creating American jobs. Right here in America, where they belong. And it takes time, but the American people are beginning to feel it. Consumer studies show consumer confidence is soaring. Buy America has been the law of the land since the 1930s. Past administrations, including my predecessor, including some Democrats as well in the past, failed to buy American. Not anymore. On my watch, federal projects that you fund, like helping build American roads, bridges, and highways, will be made with American products and built by American workers. Creating good-paying American jobs. And thanks to our CHIPS and Science Act, the United States is investing more in research and development than ever before. During the pandemic, a shortage of semiconductors, chips, that drove up the price of everything from cell phones to automobiles. And by the way, we invented those chips right here in America. Well, instead of having to import them, private companies are now investing billions of dollars to build new chip factories here in America, creating tens of thousands of jobs. Many of those jobs paying $100,000 a year and don't require a college degree. In fact, my policies have attracted $650 billion in private sector investment in clean energy, advanced manufacturing, creating tens of thousands of jobs here in America. And thanks to our bipartisan infrastructure law, 46,000 new projects have been announced all across your communities. And by the way, I noticed some of you strongly voted against it, or they're cheering on that money coming in. I like it. I'm with you. I'm with you. And if any of you don't want that money in your district, just let me know. Modernizing our roads and bridges, ports and airports, public transit systems. Removing poisonous lead pipes so every child can drink clean water without risk of brain damage. Providing affordable high-speed internet for every American, no matter where you live, urban, suburban, or rural communities in red states and blue states. Record investments in tribal communities. Because of my investment in the family farms, because I invested in family farms led by my Secretary of Agriculture, who knows more about this than anybody I know, we're better able to stay in the family for those farms and their children and grandchildren won't have to leave home to make a living. It's transformative. The great comeback story is Belvedere, Illinois, home to an auto plant for nearly 60 years. Before I came to office, the plant was on its way to shutting down. Thousands of workers feared for their livelihoods. Hope was fading. Then I was elected to office, and we raised the Belvedere repeatedly with auto companies, knowing unions would make all the difference. The UAW worked like hell to keep the plant open and get these jobs back, and together we succeeded. Instead of auto factories shutting down, auto factories reopening, and new state-of-the-art battery factories being built to power those cars there at the same. The folks at Belvedere, I say, instead of your town being left behind, your community is moving forward again. Because instead of watching auto jobs of the future go overseas, 4,000 union jobs with higher wages are building the future in Belvedere right here in America. Here tonight is UAW President Shawn Fain, a great friend and a great labor leader. Shawn, where are you? Stand up. And Dawn Sims, a third-generation worker, UAW worker at Belvedere. Shawn, I was proud to be the first president to stand on the picket line, and today, Dawn has a good job in her hometown, providing stability for her family and pride and dignity as well. Showing once again, Wall Street didn't build America. They're not bad guys. They didn't build it, though. The middle class built the country, and unions built the middle class. I say to the American people, when America gets knocked down, we get back up. We keep going. That's America. That's you, the American people. It's because of you America's coming back. It's because of you our future is brighter. It's because of you that tonight we can proudly say The state of our union is strong and getting stronger. Tonight, I want to talk about the future of possibilities that we can build together. A future where the days of trickle-down economics are over, and the wealthy and the biggest corporations no longer get all the tax breaks. And by the way, I understand corporations. I come from a state that has more corporations invested than every one of your states in the United States combined. And I represented it for 36 years. I'm not anti-corporation, but I grew up in a home where trickle-down economics didn't put much on my dad's kitchen table. That's why I determined to turn things around so middle class does well. When they do well, the poor go way up and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well. And there's more to do to make sure you're feeling the benefits of all we're doing. Americans pay more for prescription drugs than anywhere in the world. It's wrong, and I'm ending it. With the law that I proposed and signed, not one of you Republican buddies voted for it. We finally beat Big Pharma. Instead of paying $400 a month or thereabouts for insulin with diabetes, and it only costs $10 to make, they only get paid $35 a month now and still make a healthy profit. And I want to, but what to do next? I want to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for every American who needs it. Everyone. For years, people have talked about it, but finally we got it done and gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices on prescription drugs, just like the VA is able to do for veterans. That's not just saving seniors money, it's saving taxpayers money. We cut the federal deficit by $160 billion. Because Medicare will no longer have to pay those exorbitant prices to Big Pharma. This year, Medicare is negotiating lower prices for some of the costliest drugs on the market to treat everything from heart disease to arthritis. It's now time to go further and give Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices for 500 different drugs over the next decade. They're making a lot of money, guys. And they'll still be extremely profitable. Will not only save lives, it will save taxpayers another $200 billion. Starting next year, the same law caps total prescription drug costs for seniors on Medicare at $2,000 a year, even for expensive cancer drugs that cost $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. Now I want to cap prescription drug costs at $2,000 a year for everyone. Folks, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but if you want to get in Air Force One and fly to Toronto, Berlin, Moscow, well, even Moscow, probably. And bring your prescription with you, and I promise you I'll get it for you for 40% the cost you're paying now. Same company, same drug, same place. Folks, the Affordable Care Act, the old Obamacare, is still a very big deal. Over 100 million of you can no longer be denied health insurance because of pre-existing condition. Well, my predecessor and many in this chamber want to take this prescription drug away by repealing the Affordable Care Act. I'm not going to let that happen. We stopped you 50 times before, and we'll stop you again. In fact, I'm not only protecting it, I'm expanding it. The they enacted tax credits of $800 per person per year, reduce health care costs for millions of working families. That tax credit expires next year. I want to make that savings permanent. To state the obvious, women are more than half our population, but research on women's health has always been underfunded. That's why we're launching the first ever White House initiative on women's health research, led by Jill, doing an incredible job as First Lady. So pass my plan for $12 billion to transfer women's health research and benefit millions of lives all across America. I know the cost of housing is so important to you. If inflation keeps coming down, mortgage rates will come down as well, and the Fed acknowledges that. But I'm not waiting. I want to provide an annual tax credit that will give Americans $400 a month for the next 2 years as mortgage rates come down, to put toward their mortgages when they buy their first home or trade up for a little more space. Just for 2 years. And my administration is also eliminating title insurance on federally backed mortgages. When you refinance your home, you can save $1,000 or more as a consequence. For millions of renters, we're cracking down on big landlords who use antitrust law, who break antitrust laws by price fixing and driving up rents. We've cut red tape so builders can get federally financing, which is already helping build a record 1.7 million new housing units nationwide. Now pass and build and renovate 2 million affordable homes and bring those rents down. To remain the strongest economy in the world, we need to have the best education system in the world. And I suspect all of you, want to give every child, a good start by providing access to preschool for 3 and 4 years old. You know, I think I pointed out last year, that children coming from broken homes where there's no books, they're not read to, not spoken to very often, start school, kindergarten, or first grade, having heard 1 million fewer words spoken. Well, studies show that children who go to preschool are nearly 50% more likely to finish high school, go on to earn a 2- and 4-year degree, no matter what their background is. I met a year and a half ago with the leaders of the Business Roundtable. They were mad that they were angry. I think, well, they were discussing why I wanted to spend money on education. I pointed out to them, as vice president, I met with over 182 of those folks. Don't hold me to the exact number. And I asked them what they need most, the CEOs. And you've had the same experience on both sides of the aisle. They say a better educated workforce, right? So I looked at them, and I say, I come from Delaware. DuPont used to be the 8th largest corporation in the world. And every new enterprise they bought, they educated the workforce to that enterprise. But none of you do that anymore. Why are you angry with me providing you the opportunity for the best educated workforce in the world? And they all looked at me and said, I think you're right. I want to expand high-quality tutoring and summer learning to see that every child learns to read by 3rd grade. I'm also connecting local businesses and high schools so students get hands-on experience and a path to a good-paying job, whether or not they go to college. And I want to make sure that college is more affordable. Let's continue increasing the Pell Grants to working and middle-class families and increase record investments in HBCUs and minority-serving institutions, including Hispanic institutions. When I was told I couldn't universally just change the way in which we dealt with student loans, I fixed 2 student loan programs that already existed to reduce the burden of student debt for nearly 4 million Americans, including nurses, firefighters, and others in public service. Like Keenan Jones, a public educator from Minnesota, who's here with us tonight. Keenan, where are you? Keenan, thank you. He's educated hundreds of students so they can go to college. Now he's able to help, after debt forgiveness, get his own daughter to college. And folks, look, such relief is good for the economy because folks are now able to buy a home, start a business, start a family. While we're at it, I want to give public school teachers a raise. And by the way, the first couple of years, we cut the deficit. Now, let me speak to the question of fundamental fairness for all Americans. I've been delivering real results in fiscally responsible ways. We've already cut the federal deficit. We've already cut the federal deficit over $1 trillion. I signed the bipartisan deal to cut another $1 trillion in the next decade. It's my goal to cut the federal deficit another $3 trillion by making big corporations and the very wealthy finally beginning to pay their fair share. Look, I'm a capitalist. If you want to make or can make $1 million or millions of bucks, that's great. Just pay your fair share in taxes. A fair tax code is how we invest things to make this country great. Healthcare, education, defense, and so much more. But here's the deal. The last administration enacted a $2 trillion tax cut, overwhelmingly benefit the top 1%, the very wealthy and the biggest corporations, and exploded the federal deficit. They added more to the national debt than any presidential term in American history. Check the numbers. Folks at home, does anybody really think the tax code is fair? Do you really think the wealthy and big corporations need another $2 trillion tax break? I sure don't. I'm going to keep fighting like hell to make it fair. Under my plan, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in federal taxes. Nobody, not one penny. And they haven't yet. In fact, the child tax credit I passed during the pandemic cut taxes for millions of working families and cut child poverty in half. Restore that child tax credit. No child should go hungry in this country. The way to make the tax code fair is to make big corporations and the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Remember in 2020, 55 of the biggest companies in America made $40 billion and paid zero in federal income tax. Zero. Not anymore. Thanks to the law I wrote and we signed, big companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. But that's still less than working people pay in federal taxes. It's time to raise corporate minimum tax to at least 21%. So every big corporation finally begins to pay their fair share. I also want to end tax breaks for big pharma, big oil, private jets, massive executive pay when it's only supposed to be $1 million that can be deducted. They can pay them $20 million if they want, but deduct $1 million. End it now. You know, there are 1,000 billionaires in America. You know what the average federal tax is for those billionaires? No. They're making great sacrifices, 8.2%. That's far less than the vast majority of Americans pay. No billionaire should pay a lower federal tax rate than a teacher, a sanitation worker, or a nurse. I propose a minimum tax for billionaires of 25%, just 25%. You know what that would raise? That would raise $500 billion over the next 10 years. And imagine what that could do for America. Imagine a future with affordable child care. Millions of families can get they need to go to work to help grow the economy. Imagine a future with paid leave, because no one should have to choose between working and taking care of their sick family member. Imagine the future of home care and elder care, and people living with disabilities, so they can stay in their homes and family caregivers can finally get the pay they deserve. Tonight, let's all agree once again to stand up for seniors. Many of my friends on the other side of the aisle want to put Social Security on the chopping block. If anyone here tries to cut Social Security, Medicare, or raise the retirement age, I will stop you. The working people who built this country pay more into Social Security than millionaires and billionaires do. It's not fair. We have two ways to go. Republicans can cut Social Security and give more tax breaks to the wealthy. That's the proposal. Oh, no. You guys don't want another $2 trillion tax cut? I kind of thought that's what your plan was. Well, that's good to hear. You're not going to cut another $2 trillion for the super wealthy. That's good to hear. I'll protect and strengthen Social Security and make the wealthy pay their fair share. Look, too many corporations raise prices to pad their profits, charging more and more for less and less. That's why we're cracking down on corporations that engage in price gouging and deceptive pricing, from food to health care to housing. In fact, the snack companies think you won't notice if they change the size of the bag and put a hell of a lot fewer, same size bag, put fewer chips in it. No, I'm not joking. It's called shrinkflation. Pass Bobby Casey's bill and stop this. I really mean it. You probably all saw that commercial on Snickers bars. You get charged the same amount, and you got about, I don't know, 10% fewer Snickers in it. Look, I'm also getting rid of junk fees, those hidden fees at the end of your bill that are there without your knowledge. My administration announced we're cutting credit card late fees from $32 to $8. Banks and credit card companies are allowed to charge what it costs them to instigate the collection. And that's more a hell of a lot like $8 and 30-some dollars. They don't like it. The credit card companies don't like it. But I'm saving American families $20 billion a year with all the junk fees I'm eliminating. Folks at home, that's why the banks are so mad. It's $20 billion in profit. I'm not stopping there. My administration has proposed rules to make cable, travel, utilities, and online ticket sellers tell you the total price up front, so there are no surprises. It matters. It matters. And so does this. In November, my team began serious negotiation with a bipartisan group of senators. The result was a bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh? That conservatives got together and said it was a good bill? I'll be darned. That's amazing. That bipartisan bill would hire 1,500 more security agents and officers, 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backload of 2 million cases, 4,300 more asylum officers, and new policies so they can resolve cases in 6 months instead of 6 years now. What are you against? 100 more high-tech drug detection machines to significantly increase the ability to screen and stop vehicles smuggling fentanyl into America. That's killing thousands of children. This bill would save lives and bring order to the border. It will also give me and any new president new emergency authority to temporarily shut down the border when the number of migrants at the border is overwhelming. The Border Patrol Union has endorsed this bill. The Federal Chamber of Commerce is, yeah. You're saying low. Look at the facts. I know you know how to read. I believe that given the opportunity for a majority in the House and Senate would endorse the bill as well, a majority right now. But unfortunately, politics has derailed this bill so far. I'm told my predecessor called members of Congress in the Senate to demand they block the bill. He feels a political win. He viewed it as a political win for me and a political loser for him. It's not about him. It's not about me. I'd be a winner. Not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing. And it's worth it taking the chance of the $8,000. But if it's only 6 weeks, the idea is it's highly unlikely that people will pay that money and come all that way knowing that they'll be able to be kicked out quickly. Folks, I would respectfully suggest my Republican friends owe it to the American people, get this bill done. We need to act now. And if my predecessor is watching, instead of paying politics and pressuring members of Congress to block the bill, join me in telling the Congress to pass it. We can do it together. But that's what here's what he will not do. I will not demonize immigrants saying they are poison in the blood of our country. I will not separate families. I will not ban people because of their faith. Unlike my predecessor on my first day in office, I introduced a comprehensive bill to fix our immigration system. Take a look at it. It has all these and more. Secure the border. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, and so much more. But unlike my predecessor, I know who we are as Americans. We're the only nation in the world with a heart and soul that draws from old and new. Home to Native Americans, whose ancestors have been here for thousands of years. Home to people of from every place on earth. They came freely. Some came in chains. Some came when famine struck, like my ancestral family in Ireland. Some to flee persecution, to chase dreams that are impossible anywhere but here in America. That's America. And we all come from somewhere, but we're all Americans. Look, folks, we have a simple choice. We can fight about fixing the border, or we can fix it. I'm ready to fix it. Send me the border bill now. A transformational moment in history happened 59 years ago today in Selma, Alabama. Hundreds of foot soldiers for justice marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, named after the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, to claim their fundamental right to vote. They were beaten, they were bloody, and left for dead. Our late friend and former colleague, John Lewis, was on that march. We miss him. But joining us tonight are other marchers, both in the gallery and on the floor, including Betty Mae Fikes, known as the voice of Selma. The daughter of gospel singers and preachers, she sang songs of prayer and protest on that bloody Sunday to help shake the nation's conscience. 5 months later, the Voting Rights Act passed and was signed into law. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But 59 years later, there are forces taking us back in time. Voter suppression, election subversion, unlimited dark money, extreme gerrymandering. John Lewis is a great friend to many of us here, but if you truly want to honor him and all the heroes who marched with him, then it's time to do more than talk. Pass the Freedom to Vote Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And stop denying another core value of America, our diversity across American life. Banning books, it's wrong. Instead of erasing history, let's make history. I want to protect fundamental rights. Pass the Equality Act. And my message to transgender Americans, I have your back. Pass the PRO Act for workers' rights. Raise the federal minimum wage, because every worker has a right to a decent living more than $7 an hour. We're also making history by confronting the climate crisis, not denying it. I don't think any of you think there's no longer a climate crisis. At least I hope you don't. I'm taking the most significant action ever on climate in the history of the world. I'm cutting our carbon emissions in half by 2030, creating tens of thousands of clean energy jobs, like the IBEW work is building and installing 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Conserving 30% of America's lands and waters by 2030. And taking action on environmental justice fence line communities smothered by the legacy of pollution. And patterned after the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, I launched the Climate Corps to put 20,000 young people to work in the forefront of our clean energy future. I'll triple that number in a decade. To state the obvious, all Americans deserve the freedom to be safe. And America is safer today than when I took office. The year before I took office, murder rates went up 30%. 30% they went up. The biggest increase in history. It was then, through my American Rescue Plan, which every American voted against, I might add, we made the largest investment in public safety ever. Last year, the murder rate saw the sharpest decrease in history. Violent crime fell to one of its lowest levels in more than 50 years. But we have more to do. We have to help cities invest in more community police officers, more mental health workers, more community violence intervention. Give communities the tool to crack down on gun crime, retail crime, and carjacking. Keep building trust, as I've been doing by taking executive action on police reform and calling for it to be the law of the land. Directing my cabinet to review the federal classification of marijuana and expunging thousands of convictions for the mere possession, because no one should be jailed for simply using or have it on their record. Take on crimes of domestic violence. I'm ramping up the Federal Enforcement of the Violence Against Women Act that I proudly wrote when I was a senator, so we can finally end the scourge against women in America. There are other kinds of violence I want to stop. With us tonight is Jasmine, whose 9-year-old sister Jackie was murdered with 21 classmates and teachers in elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Very soon after that happened, Jill and I went to Uvalde for a couple of days. We spent hours and hours with each of the families. We heard their message, so everyone in this room, in this chamber, could hear the same message. The constant refrain, and I was there for hours meeting with every family. They said, do something. Do something. Well, I did do something by establishing the first ever Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the White House, that the Vice President is leading the charge. Thank you for doing it. Meanwhile, my predecessor told the NRA he's proud he did nothing on guns when he was president. Oh. After another shooting in Iowa recently, he said, when asked what to do about it, he said, just get over it. There's his quote, just get over it. I say, stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. I'm proud we beat the NRA when I signed the most significant gun safety law in nearly 30 years because of this Congress. We now must beat the NRA again. I'm demanding a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Pass universal background checks. None of this. I taught the Second Amendment for 12 years. None of this violates the Second Amendment or vilifies responsible gun owners. You know, as we manage challenges at home, we're also managing crises abroad, including in the Middle East. I know the last 5 months have been gut-wrenching for so many people, for the Israeli people, for the Palestinian people, and so many here in America. This crisis began on October 7th with a massacre by a terrorist group called Hamas, as you all know. 1,200 innocent people, women and girls, men and boys, slaughtered after enduring sexual violence. The deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and 250 hostages taken. Here in this chamber tonight are families whose loved ones are still being held by Hamas. I pledge to all the families that we will not rest until we bring every one of your loved ones home. We also we will also work around the clock to bring home Evan and Paul, Americans being unjustly detained by the Russians and others around the world. Israel has the right to go after Hamas. Hamas ended this conflict by releasing hostages, laying down arms, could end it by releasing the hostages, laying down arms, and surrendering those responsible for October 7th. But Israel has Israel has a added burden because Hamas hides and operates among the civilian population like cowards under hospitals, daycare centers, and all the like. Israel also has a fundamental responsibility, though, to protect innocent civilians in Gaza. This war has taken a greater toll on innocent civilians than all previous wars in Gaza combined. More than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed, most of whom are not Hamas. Thousands and thousands of innocent women and children, girls and boys, also orphaned. Nearly 2 million more Palestinians under bombardment or displacement. Homes destroyed, neighborhoods in rubble, cities in ruin. Families without food, water, medicine. It's heartbreaking. I've been working nonstop to establish an immediate ceasefire that would last for 6 weeks to get all the prisoners released, all the hostages released, to get the hostages home and ease the intolerable and humanitarian crisis and build toward an enduring, something more enduring. The United States has been leading international efforts to get more humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Tonight, I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day. And Israel must do its part. Israel must allow more aid into Gaza to ensure humanitarian workers aren't caught in the crossfire. And they're announcing they're going to have a crossing in northern Gaza. To the leadership of Israel, I say this: humanitarian assistance cannot be a secondary consideration or a bargaining chip. Protecting and saving innocent lives has to be a priority. As we look to the future, the only real solution to the situation is a two-state solution over time. And I say this as a lifelong supporter of Israel. My entire career, no one has a stronger record with Israel than I do. I challenge any of you here. I'm the only American president to visit Israel in wartime. But there is no other path that guarantees Israel's security and democracy. There is no other path that guarantees Palestinians can live in peace with peace and dignity. And there's no other path that guarantees peace between Israel and all of its neighbors, including Saudi Arabia, with whom I'm talking. Creating stability in the Middle East also means containing the threat posed by Iran. That's why I built a coalition of more than a dozen countries to defend international shipping and freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. I've ordered strikes to degrade the Houthi capability and defend U.S. forces in the region. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not hesitate to direct further measures to protect our people and our military personnel. For years, I've heard many of my Republican and Democratic friends say that China is on the rise and America's falling behind. They've got it backwards. I've been saying it for over 4 years, even when I wasn't president. America's rising. We have the best economy in the world. And since I've come to office, our GDP is up, our trade deficit with China is down to the lowest point in over a decade. And we're standing up against China's unfair economic practices. We're standing up for peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits. I've revitalized our partnership and alliance in the Pacific. India, Australia, Japan, South Korea, the Pacific Islands. I've made sure that the most advanced American technologies can't be used in China, not allowing to trade them there. Frankly, for all this tough talk on China, it never occurred to my predecessor to do any of that. I want competition with China, not conflict. And we're in a stronger position to win the conflict of the 21st century against China than anyone else, for that matter, than any time as well. Here at home, I've signed over 400 bipartisan bills. But there's more to pass my unity agenda. Strengthen penalties on fentanyl trafficking. You don't want to do that, huh? Pass bipartisan privacy legislation to protect our children online. Harness the promise of AI to protect us from peril. Ban AI voice impersonations and more. And keep our truly sacred obligation to train and equip those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home and when they don't. That's why the song Support and Help of Dennis and the VA, I signed the PACT Act. One of the most significant laws ever, helping millions of veterans exposed to toxins who now are battling more than 100 different cancers. Many of them don't come home, but we owe them and their families support. We owe it to ourselves to keep supporting our new health research agency called ARPA-H, and remind us that we can do big things like end cancer as we know it, and we will. Let me close with this. I know you don't want to hear any more, Lindsay, but I got to say a few more things. I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while. When you get to be my age, certain things become clearer than ever. I know the American story. Again and again, I've seen the contest between competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation, between those who want to pull America back to the past and those who want to move America into the future. My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy, a future based on core values that have defined America: honesty, decency, dignity, equality, to respect everyone, to give everyone a fair shot, to give hate no safe harbor. Now, other people my age see it differently. The American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution, that's not me. I was born amid World War II, when America stood for the freedom of the world. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, among working-class people who built this country. I watched in horror as two of my heroes, like many of you did, Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy, were assassinated. And their legacies inspired me to pursue a career in service. I left the law firm and became a public defender because my city of Wilmington was the only city in America occupied by the National Guard after Dr. King was assassinated because of the riots. And I became a county councilman almost by accident. I got elected to the United States Senate when I had no intention of running at age 29. Then vice president to our first black president. Now president to the first women vice president. In my career, I've been told I was too young. By the way, they didn't let me on the Senate elevators for votes sometimes. Not a joke. And I've been told I'm too old. Whether young or old, I've always known what endures. I've known our North Star. The very idea of America is that we're all created equal and deserves to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I won't walk away from it now. I'm optimistic. I really am. I'm optimistic, Nancy. The issue facing our nation isn't how old we are. It's how old are our ideas. Hate, anger, revenge, retribution are the oldest of ideas. But you can't lead America with ancient ideas that only take us back. You lead America, the land of possibilities. You need a vision for the future and what can and should be done. Tonight you've heard mine. I see a future where defending democracy, you don't diminish it. I see a future where we restore the right to choose and protect our freedoms, not take them away. I see a future where the middle class finally has a fair shot and the wealthy have to pay their fair share in taxes. I see a future where we save the planet from the climate crisis and our country from gun violence. Above all, I see a future for all Americans. I see a country for all Americans. And I will always be president for all Americans because I believe in America. I believe in you, the American people. You're the reason we've never been more optimistic about our future than I am now. So let's build the future together. Let's remember who we are. We are the United States of America. And there is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
1 hour, 7 minutes long. President Biden speaking before a joint session of Congress, shaking the vice president's hand there. Speaker Mike Johnson's hand as well. There was a lot at stake going into this evening. This is probably the largest, if not one of the largest audiences President Biden will have before the election come November. Came right out of the gate. Looking at Republicans in that room in particular when talking about Vladimir Putin, saying we must help Ukraine, we must fund Ukraine. Putin is on the march. Talked about his predecessor in comments that the former president, Donald Trump, that didn't use his name, has said about Putin in recent days. We'll get to what Trump said about Putin in just a moment here. The president telling the American people in that chamber, the American people, that history is watching. He talked about the overturning of Roe versus Wade, what's followed, the IVF debate in this country. So you can see him begin to leave the chamber here. And he looked right at the Supreme Court justices. He spoke of their decision that said women have electoral power, and he essentially said you're about to see it come November. And on immigration, which is certainly one of the top issues, if not the top issue, as we head into November, the president again squarely looking at Republicans in that room, saying we must act on that bipartisan bill out of the Senate from both Republicans, conservative Republicans and Democrats. Senator Langford looking on. The cutaway of him from Oklahoma, Senator Langford nodding yes. President Biden arguing we could adjudicate asylum seekers in 6 months instead of 6 years with this bill, listing all the other things that come with it too, saying we can fight about the border or we can fix it. We should fix it now. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Senator Bernie Sanders shaking the president's hand. We know, as I mentioned earlier, Senator Sanders, one of the many offering advice in the days leading up to this speech. I'm curious what you're hearing from your sources. Did he do what they wanted him to do?
I can tell you the White House is very happy right now. I bet there are a lot of high fives going on right now. They knew the challenges going into this. The president well aware of the criticism of his campaign, the pressure on him to perform tonight. The White House feels that he nailed this, that he put his critics, on their heels at every turn here. I think the overarching message coming out of this speech was really game on. I mean, it is clear from this speech that the general election is now on. And for months, the president has been criticized for not going hard enough against Donald Trump. There really was a sense tonight that he was ripping the Band-Aid off, that he was letting loose, that he was letting out a lot of that frustration. It certainly didn't take him long to tear into Trump on everything from NATO to abortion. He assailed the Trump tax cuts. He skewered him on immigration. And the tone of it was just so classic Biden, right? It wasn't polished, lofty rhetoric. It was folksy. It was personal. He was funny at times. And David, he repeatedly put Republicans on notice. He sparred with them in the room in a way I don't think we've ever seen before at a State of the Union. I mean, at one point, poking them on the immigration bill, he said, you don't like that bill, huh? The one that you guys wanted, the one that your party negotiated? He asked them point blankly, what are you against? This felt more like a raucous, rowdy campaign speech than a State of the Union. And I think the big question and challenge going forward is, can the president bring this fire to the trail? Will this Joe Biden show up at those campaign events all the way to November?
Yeah, prodding Republicans, asking them, what in this bill don't you like? Tell me what you don't want, that they've laid out with the help of Senator Langford, who was right in that audience there tonight. John, it was very striking, taking on Donald Trump, but not by name. How many times did he say predecessor tonight?
Hey, look, this was a great night for Joe Biden, and this was much more a campaign speech than a State of the Union address. And you saw that in how he repeatedly took on Donald Trump. By our count, 16 times did he either say my predecessor, the former president, or other people my age, referring to Donald Trump. Very direct attacks. The most powerful one, the very first one, when he comes out and he first invokes Ronald Reagan, who told the Russians, who told the Soviets, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And then he said, compared to Donald Trump, who tells Putin, do whatever the hell you want. Very pointed, the kind of campaign-style speech you just never have seen in a State of the Union, but I think very effective.
And in fact, what he was talking about is Donald Trump just in recent days talking about trying to get people to up the spending on defense, NATO countries, which has been a long-standing argument for Donald Trump, and one that even President Biden has talked about, making sure everybody pays the fair share. But it was that turn when Donald Trump then said, if they don't do it, well then,
I'd say do whatever the hell you'd want.
To Vladimir Putin.
So, you know, look, but you have to remember, I think this was a great night for Joe Biden. I don't know if it was a home run, but it certainly was a triple. But one factor to consider here, he's been practicing for this speech. This is home turf. He knew the responses. The Republicans are very predictable. This audience is a very predictable audience. He knew the taunts that were going to come, and he knew that what he was going to do in response. And the way he directly took on Marjorie Taylor Greene.
No, there's no question about that. He knew that was coming on immigration. He knew what her argument was going to be, and he answered it in real time.
The rest of the campaign will not be so scripted. That's the caution.
It will not be.
It will not be so terrific. But this was a very big night for Biden.
No question about that. Lindsay Davis also with us here at the desk. And Lindsay, that moment, very rare for a president to look right at members of the Supreme Court sitting before them. But he did, and he talked about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. He urged Congress, let's codify Roe v. Wade. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But he mentioned that in their decision on Roe v. Wade, that they talked about the power women have, the electoral power they have, and then he ran with it.
So significant in that moment for him to look at the justices directly in the room and talk about that. And specifically, he said, look, the power of women, that when reproductive freedom was on the ballot, we won in 2022, 2023, and we will win again in 2024. And it's important to note that abortion may be on the ballot in as many as 11 states, including the battleground states of Arizona and Nevada. And so potentially that could determine the election, right? If that really brings people out in those two particular states. But I do want to add, though, David, I think that even beyond some of these big ticket items of abortion or immigration or economy, in many cases, this was about the elephant in the room, if you will, about his age. And those people who have said that they voted for Biden the last time around, 61% of them, according to the New York Times, who said that they thought that he was too old to be an effective president. And it seemed he really ate his Wheaties today, right? I mean, he had that fire in the belly. He had the quick zingers, and he addressed, for many accounts, directly head-on, the issue of his age, saying it's not about how old we are, it's about how old our ideas are.
No question about that, Lindsay. Taking on the issue of age and saving it really to the very end of the speech, saying, you know I may not look like it, but I've been around for a while, using a little humor to address it. I want to get reaction from Donna Brazile, former head of the DNC, of course, an advisor to Democrats along the way, and this administration as well. I'm so curious, Donna, what your advice was them leading up to tonight, and did he deliver in your eyes?
I mean, look, he had to pour some Tabasco in his speech, and I think he delivered it very well. It was spicy, it was juicy, it was another masterclass in how do you defend your values, how do you tell the American people, because of you, we're stronger, because of you, we're fighting harder. It was quintessential Joe Biden. Politics is in his blood and his DNA, and tonight we saw why he was elected president.
Let me ask you, Donna, for those at home who might ask, why not a performance like this in other moments along the way? Where did this come from tonight? What in particular about this?
He was speaking to the American people, and also he was speaking truth to power, looking at the Supreme Court. He said every last word I would have said to John Roberts if I had the opportunity. So tonight, women and of course, the men who love us and support us understand that Joe Biden is going to fight for women. He's going to fight for our reproductive health. What I loved about the president tonight is that he got up and the first thing he said to Mr. Putin was that, I see you and we're going to defend Ukraine. It was a great speech, a great night for Joe Biden, but Joe Biden shows up every day of his life, whether he shows up in the morning, and by the way, it's oatmeal, not Wheaties. I've had
and she would know. Donna would know.
I've had the pleasure of having breakfast, and I wanted grits, and he had oatmeal. But he showed up tonight, and he's going to show up every day. And what you're going to see on the campaign trail is not just the president, the vice president, and everyone else who's going to stand up for democracy and freedom.
Did he kickstart this campaign tonight?
The campaign was already underway. I think tonight he gave us a little gas in our tank.
Reince Priebus, former head of the RNC, former chief of staff to Donald Trump. What was your take on tonight?
Well, it sounded a lot like a DNC speech, like a convention speech, a political speech. I think it was a health and wellness check. I think everyone was right about that. I think he passed the health and wellness check tonight. Clearly excited, perhaps overcompensating, maybe yelling quite a bit. I think you're going to see a lot of people talking about the screaming and yelling. But I also think he runs a risk of trying to paint a picture that the American people don't buy. This idea that the economy is booming, that the border is secure, and it's only because the Republicans won't pass a bill, and America is dominant on the world stage. And so I think he overplayed that quite a bit. I don't think that's what Americans are feeling out there. But as far as a health and wellness check, yeah, I think he did that tonight.
Let me ask you, Reince, you're still closely connected to people who are working within the Trump campaign. The national polls as they stand right now, and we're really far out, we all know that, but they are very close. Donald Trump leading in some of the major polls of the last 2 weeks and in the battleground states, but again, a very close race. Is that the sense even inside Trump world?
Yeah,
just how close this is?
Absolutely. I mean, there is no feeling like this is, a blowout. I think people in the Trump operation know that it's going to be close. They know that it's going to come down to 100,000 votes in 5 states. It's all going to be about data, ground game, and turnout, and that's what they know is happening.
Reince Priebus, Donna Brazil, both with us here as we cover this, and we're preparing for the Republican response. We should let you all know at home. We will bring that to you as well with a rising star in the Republican Party. We continue to watch President Biden in that room here tonight. And Martha Raddatz, there were so many questions going into tonight, obviously about age in this country, even from President Biden's supporters. You've traveled the country leading up to the primaries. He's uncontested. I mean, obviously the final candidate dropped out. But even supporters of Biden, when they leave, telling the exit polls that they were concerned about his age as well. Did he assuage those concerns tonight with his performance here?
Well, he certainly was vigorous. It was a campaign speech. It was probably for the Democrats a dream campaign speech because of his energy. I don't know whether he was really screaming, Reince, but he was definitely raising the level of his voice. And I think that's probably because he often does clear his throat. He does have problems with his voice sometimes. He didn't seem to have a lot of problems tonight. But I also think this speech was more than just a campaign speech. It was a legacy speech. No matter what happens in November, Joe Biden laid down the hammer tonight about what he believes and what he feels about this country. So I think that Democrats will look at it as that as well. And that's why Joe Biden probably really rose to this moment. He knew not only from a campaign speech how important it was, but for his own legacy, David.
And I suspect, Martha, that we heard the beginning of what will be a major campaign theme here. At the end of this speech, when he said, it's not how old you are, it's how old your ideas are. And he tried to reframe this age debate.
That's exactly right. And I think his campaign people have been saying again and again, and people within the White House, I know there has been some disagreement about how they are handling that age issue. You can't ignore it. He can't ignore it. And in the next few weeks, he may stumble, he may make mistakes, and it'll come back to that age issue again. But for tonight, he put that to rest in so many ways.
I want to bring in Terry Moran, who has covered multiple presidencies here in Washington. Terry, you knew the stakes going into tonight, and it's not hyperbole to talk about the high wire act that President Biden was walking into that chamber to try to perform. Did he deliver?
It sure was a high wire act, and I think the fair thing to say, a lot of Democrats over the past few weeks have been panicking. I'll bet the vast majority of them feel better tonight because the president did hit hard. You know, you can talk about his performance all you want, but I think more importantly, what he hit. This was the old-time religion, the middle class, working class, labor, Democrat agenda. And he reached for it again and again and again, both in terms of the values, that line, you can't love your country only when you win. The best line of the speech. Fair play and decency are bedrock values of the middle class. No matter who people voted for, the notion that you don't love your country if your guys lose, it doesn't sit well with them. And then right across that economic agenda, hitting again and again and again, middle class values.
With just a few seconds left in this segment, Pierre Thomas, Chief Justice Correspondent, President Biden making it very clear tonight, defending democracy will be a key theme right into November.
Absolutely. He went very hard on the issue of January 6th in terms of the attack on the Capitol. He wanted to make sure that everyone in the public was reminded of that, pointing to Congress to let them know that they were scurrying for their lives, pointing that out as well, David. Also, it struck me that this was a president, particularly in regards to the House Republicans who have been trying to impeach them, that he really wanted to take them on head on and let them know he really didn't care that much about how they felt about what he was saying, David.
President Biden with a smile on his face there as he leaves the chamber. And when we come back here, the Republican response tonight from a rising star in the Republican Party, as I mentioned, Alabama Senator Katie Britt. She's a mother of two. She's just 42 years old, the youngest Republican woman ever elected to the Senate. We're going to go to break here for just a moment because she's getting ready to now speak to the American people. The Republican response to President Biden right after the break. Don't go away. ABC News live coverage of the State of the Union.
Moments from now, she is a rising star in the Republican Party, the youngest female senator ever elected in the GOP. Katie Britt from Alabama delivers the Republican response next.
Not flossing well? Then add the whoa of Listerine to your routine. New science shows Listerine is 5 times more effective than floss at reducing plaque above the gum line for a cleaner, healthier mouth. Listerine, feel the whoa.